Yo, yo, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
I'm really excited because you've reached out to me with some fun, awesome PvZ opening, my man. And what makes me especially excited is the way I'm going to be naming these shows is it
Uh-huh.
has the name of the actual person. So I was just renaming the
Oh,
Showtime
no.
one to Viasiva, and now I get to say J Raze Whipple! Hells yeah, it's Whipple time. I might actually call the video It's Whipple time before your name.
That's fair, yeah.
It's Whipple time. How are you doing, man?
Doing good. And couldn't help but notice that you played a game before this.
Was that you?
And yeah, I was wondering if maybe you had some first-hand experience with what I'm about to show you.
I was like, I don't know who this is, but they are fucking me with some weird, crazy, awesome shit. And I said that. I was like, I wonder if that's Raze.
Yeah, it's
Oh my
it's
god.
it seems weird, it seems out there, it seems gimmicky, but the whole underlying philosophy is that
Yeah.
it lets you build basically the same unit set all game long and just be a dick with it and just do these really annoying things and just bounce around the map, and you never really have to worry about transitioning until your opponent's pretty much dead. Because I don't like in a lot of PvZ games the wide variety of playstyles that Zerg has means that you feel really defensive as Protoss, and like anytime a Baneling run by hits your probe line, you just feel like you're dead. So this is kind of a way around that, because what you end up doing is you just probe through everything. Like I frequently go up to like 85 probes with this, and then just anytime you take any damage, you just keep probing and keep expanding, and you're usually even or higher economy than the Zerg. So it's pretty much a role reversal.
It's the, yeah, get out of control style, right? You know, you're almost like alpha starring, kind of like where it's just like harass, harass,
Yeah,
harass. Bam, I got a
it's
fourth Nexus. And the Zerg's like, when did that happen?
yeah, it's very similar to the way Alpha Star plays versus Zerg, but with one slight deviation. Like in the game that I played versus you, I ended up making more air units than I typically do. Like usually it's just 6 to 7 oracles, and a bunch of times I'll even skip Phoenix or a Void Ray and just make the oracles. And then you're essentially forcing an overreaction, and then you do like a little 5-gate push with Stalker Sentry, and you can use the oracles to clear creep and set up stasis wards, so you can't really just like bulldoze you. And then behind that, you're taking a 4th base, getting a bunch of tech upgrades, and then you take a 5th base, and then you just have disruptors, and then you're essentially just hitting the Zerg all game long.
It's
So
pretty
yeah.
awesome, man. Well, how about let me get you on BattleNet. What chat channel can I find you in? So we can hop in the replay
Slash
together.
join pig.
Okay, you can come to me. If Pig works, I don't know. Am I even in Pig right now? Try Piggy, Piggy. I just
Sure.
rejoined Pig, but I don't think it's working for me. I think the channel's like full or something. I don't know, man.
There we go.
All right.
And this actually works out pretty nicely, because the base replay that I wanted to show to kind of show what happens in a general game, that one is on the previous patch, so we'd have to go offline to watch it. But I feel like we can jump into some other situations now that we have kind of a
Okay.
baseline groundwork established from last game.
All right. Well, how about do you want to steer this first replay, or do you want to watch the one that we just played first and kind of go over it, and then we can?
Yeah, we can do that.
All right. So we can watch this one. Do you want to steer it, or actually, you know what? I'll. Ooh, you could. I'll steer it, but just tell me if I'm going somewhere I'm not meant to be or anything, and we'll try
Okay. Yeah,
we'll
sure.
try this. We'll see how it plays out, and we'll kind of figure out what's the best for steering the replay. I mean, it's something where we can always load the replay up separately as well, and like talk about things, and then just like at some point, if we're like, wait, are you talking about what's the game timer? And we can kind of sync up every now and then. So we can do that with the next replay, since that's going to be old patch anyway. Awesome. So this was you throwing me in the dumpster. The power of Radiant.
Got a little bit tricky. Killing the 4th base. Losing my 4th base kind of sucked. I think I came from the wrong angle. I think because then I was sort of out of position, especially for the 4th base that I was taking when you moved down. I think if I go through the middle, and just use it to clear creep, because like I shouldn't realistically ever kill the 4th base there. So basically what I'm doing is trying to poke and clear creep, so I might as well go from the other side. Yeah, losing the probe there was not ideal.
Yeah, I was as always obsessed with that probe, wasting a lot of mining time to kill it, because like I enjoy being inefficient apparently. And I'm traumatized by Turkey Dano, I guess.
Yeah. I set out the second one just to make sure there weren't like you weren't doing like the 2 hatchling flood where you send the 8 around the map or whatever.
Which is, yeah, that's really very important, I think. Like, it's so easy to die otherwise, right? You know, especially since, you know, you want to hide your Stargate a little bit in the main. Now, you are going Stalker second unit. So
yeah, so what I wanted to do this game was just go Oracles, but then I saw with my Adept that your second Overlord was right here. So if there's 2 Overlords there, I figured I might as well make an air unit. Anti-air unit.
Yeah, that was a mistake for me. I was like, oh my god, what's my second Overlord doing here? And I was like, oh god,
yeah, they're in the exact same place.
They're like buddied up. I was like, oh no. I was like, I really should have spread them out. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna gamble, send them in the same direction, and just hope they somehow get out of there. And should have spread them out for sure. But
one tiny note with like the specifics of the build. If I don't go Void Ray and I go Oracle, I have a bit more minerals, and from that I usually go third and fourth gas before third pylon, so I get my gases up really quick, and then I'll go second Stargate before second gateway, as long as I'm not being all in.
Okay, cool. So this pylon here, so we'd go third and fourth gas down at like. It's like a 310 third and fourth gas.
Yeah, it's basically when you have like 7 probes. Because normally with this, I'll try to do it when I have like 9 probes on my natural. But if I can get away with cutting the Void Ray, then I do it with like 7 probes. And I just get into that very quickly.
Awesome. All right. So the idea is obviously sometimes you skip the clearing unit for the Overlords. Sometimes we get it. But either way, we're looking at sustained Oracle harassment. Those fast gases for non-stop Oracle chronos. There's no real chronos on probes after that start. Straight into a second Stargate, more Oracles, more probes. And how do we look to secure the third? Obviously, the Void Ray is kind of doing a bit of Overlord hunting. Do we kind of just bring that home to secure the third? It kind of looks like it's going to clear up a few lings around the base. How do we line that up?
So it's a bit by feel, because some games don't even have the Void Ray. There's a lot of this build that kind of depends on what you really think your opponent is doing. Like, I saw that you had a Ling spread out to watch for the Oracle here, and then I saw one at my third. So almost anyone who does that isn't going to Ling flood to try to deny the third. They're just worried about scouting. Because if you're going to try to deny the third, you just kind of have all your Lings grouped up, generally speaking. So from that, I kind of felt that I could just patrol my Void Ray around the middle of the map and try to clear up Lings, like moving across the Watchtower or the different pathways.
Guess that's why I get so many cancels on third Nexuses, because I usually have the spotting Lings and I'm still going for the cancel, and then I pull them from their spotting positions as I go for the dive on the probe anyway, or the dive on the Nexus, just with a nice lovely F2.
If I get a sense there's one coming, I'll pull 3 units over to the third, like I'll have like maybe 2 Adepts and a Zealot or something, and I'll keep an Oracle there. And just try to get that up.
You get this nice little pylon choke point, so we get a lovely little position there, and we go for just a quick little semi wall on that side of it.
Yep.
So this is a nice little wall off on this map. And do you get another gateway down the bottom, or you go for another pylon? That's not a full wall, I think, right? So
it is. It doesn't look like it, but it is.
Ah, okay, cool.
Yeah, there's a weird texture there.
Whilst it has a soft spot that banelings can get through, it's a very, or Ravages, it's like an awkward way to get in. It gives you so much time to pull your probes away. So even though it's like, you know, you don't want to pylon as a soft spot in the wall above the gas where these gateways are, having it down the back, you're kind of forcing units to come in, go, smash through the pylon and then run in, and it gives you unlimited time to react to any run-bys later on. And you can always reinforce it with like a gateway in front or behind if you need to. But real solid wall off, and it's really nice because it's just a few gateways to do that. But behind this, we're kind of going, all right, Oracles. We're getting that third up. We're probing more or less nonstop. Is there a point here where we consciously swap back into chronoing probes as that third base is going down? Or is it pure chronos on the Nexus? Is a little bit by feel?
It's so I generally do it the same way every game, where I'll pour chronos on Oracles as I'm getting the third up. And then after the third's down, I might start putting chronos back on. It depends on when I'm cutting Oracles and how fast I'm getting anything else up. Because once I cut Oracles, then I'll go back to chroning something else. And then it depends if I get if I'm still making probes before I get Twilight Forge. The structural thing here is that so you go 2 gates before your third, and then I go 3 more gateways as I'm making the oracles. So then I have 5 gateways and my 2 stargates, and that's what I look to push off of. I generally make somewhere around 4 sentries typically, and then I just make stalkers and have my early game adepts or whatever, and then I go for a push from there.
So what's really cool about this is recently, it was after ASIS, the ASIS tournament over in Finland, Assembly. That was where Stats, of course, kind of made famous and popularized the triple oracle into sentry single immortal push, right? Just a 6 gate. It was 6 gate every game. Yep, 6 gate. No Twilight, no Forge, just 1 immortal, chrono that, chrono a prism, and the 3 oracles are kind of coming in, diving with the Phoenix, doing a bit of damage, pull out, and then he would start dropping stasis wards on each mineral line while hitting the front with this kind of surprising gateway timing. And the piece of theory that this all works off is there is something when you go Stargate, you got ultimate mobility, scouting, great little mobile harassment. The Zerg player wants to just hold down the drone key against any Stargate opening. And the more you invest in that Stargate, the more they want to hold down that drone key and be mega greedy. We see it here with this game. You're pushing, I'm on 74 workers, just building roaches at the last minute, right? All I've done is build drones, queens. I've basically... And this is actually what I talk about a lot when I see the Void Ray, especially. I actually just play my ZVT build. It's just queens and drones, minus the Zerglings being needed because there's no Hellions. And I'm like, man, I just want a drone. I want a drone. And the reason that build works so well from Stats is he was like, hey, triple Oracle and a Phoenix. Like, the Zerg's like, let's build 75 workers before I build a single roach. And he's like, bam, here's a few sentries, an immortal, some force fields, warping a few stalkers, bam, kill your third base, or even straight up win the game sometimes. And this is the same thing, right? It's just we've upped the ante on the amount of air units. We're looking for more damage with them. We're looking for more greed from the Zerg as well. And then we're hitting with pretty much the same sort of attack. It doesn't have the robo, it doesn't have the prism there, but it's still sentries, stalkers, no upgrades, potentially a few zealots. So this is kind of cool. It's looking for that same thing. And I really like this because if I think about that build, it was so popular for a few weeks. Every Zerg player got on top of defending. And this is the rotation of builds we see, right? Terran players try a strat, gets really good, wins against Zerg for 2 weeks. Every Zerg has played 300 games against it on the ladder. And they're like, I know exactly what's happening. I build exactly this many drones. Then I build these fighting units. I crush the pressure, build another 20 drones while teching up, and I'm just way ahead, right? Your timing falls flat. So anytime you can add a variation to an existing powerful kind of thing that throws the opponent off and throws a spanner in the works, I love it. And I think this is really cool because it's so hard for the Zerg to adjust to just right. And these are the sort of build orders where, I think of like BlizzCon and how Roddy was like calling for Protoss players to start doing like 2 Stargate Phoenix builds. And I was like, dude, 2 Stargate Oracle, man. Get like anything to throw them off, right? Because we kept seeing this Protoss players just getting crushed by Swarmos Nidus or these other sorts of like, I'm just getting up into the Ravagerling Bane and I don't build any units till I have 75 drones. And there's something about just putting the Zerg outside of their comfort zone where it suddenly you see the difficulty of Zerg when the Zerg doesn't have an exact read on what's going on. But once the Zerg has a read on the first aggression, shuts it down, gets in control of the game, things can spiral out of control and you can have that feeling of helplessness, which I think defines PvZ for a lot of Protoss players who don't specialize in this matchup.
Yeah, that's generally my thought process behind it. I think the closest anagram to this build would be something like 2 Stargate Phoenix, but there are a couple notable differences, especially because I'm making roughly the same number of air units, maybe like, I think my average number is like 7 Oracles versus 8 Phoenix, and then gas-wise, it's somewhat similar. The main difference being that the Oracles they have a bit less damage to just kill drones when there's spores and queens set up, but they do have a much better time like killing Zerglings, defending bases, setting up stasis wards, and they're overall just more useful in the mid game. So in my mind, it feels like a smoother transition that lets me be a lot greedier behind it. Like you killed my 4th base here, and I'm still like in a very decent economic spot. Like I still have 73 probes, and I'm just gonna I'm just gonna grab a really quick 5th here as I'm pressuring with this.
And if we theory craft this, from the Zerg side of it, I was like saying right after the game, why did I build 15 Corruptors? I'm a dummy.
Yeah, that was not the not the ideal response.
And I was saying, I don't know, were you watching the stream? Did you tune in to catch me talking about how I see a void ray basically, and I'm just like,
I caught a couple minutes of your analysis after.
Yeah, I think there's carriers. You show me one void ray, I just think there's carriers coming. I'm so traumatized from someone getting the 6 carriers, and you're like, no. I'm like, I'm fine, I got this. And then they kill 2 hatcheries before my corruptors pop, and I'm like, fucking yeah. And I get so obsessed with getting my corruptors down time. This was, a lovely save on the Nexus here. This was really good. I think it would have been an interesting game there with the 4th snipe. If I didn't go corruptors, with the tech that I had, my tech was definitely far behind from where it wanted to be. I was thinking, throw just 10, 12 mutas, go for a dive. Obviously not more than that, because if I go more than that, I got to go full muta corruptor, right? Because I know you've got multiple Stargates. I know you're gonna fuck them with Phoenixes. I want to just get them across the map sneakily if possible, dive into a mineral line, dance around, and basically just go, okay, yes, there's oracles, yes, they're a problem, but let's play Ravagerling Bane while trying to just use Queens for anti-air and kind of like I was really unsure even in the post game where I was like, should I go Hydras? I'm swapping a Hydra Bane here because otherwise I got nothing for the oracles other than Queens. Do I just wait and get out potentially some Vipers with my Ravagerling Bane? Do I just play Ravagerling Bane, ignore the oracles, and just be running in from all sides and overwhelming to the point where I ignore the oracles to a certain extent until later in the game? I was kind of running through because you create an awkward scenario for the player. I mean, you go Stalker Sentry, Zergling, Baneling surrounds, destroy this. You've got Stasis traps, like a field of Stasis traps to fall back on. You've got this transition into Disruptors, which are amazing versus clumps of Banelings and Ravagers. If I go Hydras or Lurkers, the Disruptors are already there to start sieging me down. There's so many problems you're creating for the Zerg player. I was like, Jesus, this has got to be the most annoying thing to play against. It seems really cool.
That's basically my philosophy with this. I'm trying to create the most awkward number of oracles, because I don't know how much you remember, but you casted quite a few games of me doing WCS winter qualifiers, and back then I was going 3 Stargate Oracle pretty much every PvZ.
Yeah.
And that had a lot of interesting things you could do with it, but I would run into problems where you could play a Zerg player who would go Hydra and then just rush Hive for a lurker timing, and it gets really awkward because that's when you want to be transitioning into something else. But then if he Hydra's for a Viper timing, but then if he gets one parasitic bomb on your oracles, it's really rough. And it's if he's pushing out, you can kind of hold it if you only make oracles and try to get a full surround on him. But then if he just plays defensive with it, then you have 30 oracles and you can't really do much with it.
Indeed.
So this is kind of more of somewhere 6 to 10 oracles where the Zerg player has to respect it, and as soon as they see it, they're throwing down multiple spores per base, making a lot of queens. Generally expanding a little bit slower than they'd like to in some other situations because the oracles themselves can just snipe a hatchery. And you have to build so much static defense, but it's not as committed. I'm transitioning super quickly off of it.
And I mean, if we thought about it, if you as a player have unlimited practice time, right? If you have the ability to practice more or less non-stop, uninterrupted, you've got you've got every single transition practiced at 100%, and we don't have to worry about, oh well, I'm not practiced at this, that's why I can't do it. A lot of our decisions, right, as StarCraft players, it's not this is the best decision, it's this is the decision that I am best at executing, combined with this is the best of the things I know how to play. But if you think about it, you could arguably be like, well, I'm confident with 3 Stargate Oracle, I'm confident with 2 Stargate Oracle, and these are just different choices based on the meta of how Zerg players are adapting and adjusting, right? Players are really just being too greedy, and they're getting a little bit ahead. I'm going to throw that 3 Stargate Oracle out, and I'm going to punish them a bit harder because they're trying to get away with just 6 queens and 2 spores at each base, and that's they're getting their 4th up too early. They're getting their 5th up too early. They're going straight 85 drones. I'm falling too far behind. Okay, let's bring back the 3 Stargate Oracle and punish it more, right? Nothing is 100% solid in StarCraft. There is always an answer, right? And there is always, we as players can be prepared for those options just by understanding, well, this is an option. We can go harder this way. We can go pull it back and transition quicker the other way, right? Do we commit harder to the timing or harder to the transition? And there's this constant dance and adjustment that happens within the metagame, as well as within your own meta with specific players, right? It's not just the ladder. It's no. I'm playing Cham. Cham's a greedy douchebag. I'm gonna fucking just go 4 Stargate Oracle or something because he just never respects the oracles. And if I don't really hit hard, he gets too far ahead or something, right? Like, you know, and you've got your own kind of catalog of how each player plays. Do you find you're a guy who does that a lot, or do you think you're one of the players who's much more standardized, where you're like, no, I just play the same against everyone?
Do that way more than almost anyone else I play in terms of like trying to counter specific players and what they'll do. Yeah, I'm pretty much always thinking about like my opponent as a person more than their race, and I think like what I think they'll do in response to certain situations, and I'll do builds that like might not be optimal for the meta, but I know they struggle against, or that they do a specific response against, and then I can metagame that.
I think it's such a powerful tool, right? It's something where there's always a push and pull. You can look at sometimes like the weakness of like a Showtime or stats is sometimes they do look like they just want to play the same build even Zest. Even though Zest is more of a timing attack guy, he still often wants to do the exact same timing attack off the exact same opening, right? And then Neeb's a bit of a black box for me because he is so brutal with his timings. Sometimes it does feel like it's just something he's done 1,000 times. He's just so tight it kills people. But then there's other players who adapt to. Yeah.
Neeb picks builds specifically that he thinks, even versus like lower tier players, he picks builds that he think will put him in a good spot versus what they like to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget the time he made Jon Snow look like a Bronze Leaguer in like Challenger or something. You know, he just killed him with 2 Adepts and 2 Oracles, and I was like, holy fuck. Like,
I remember watching Neeb versus Jon Snow in one game, and Neeb did the normal 2 Adept pressure that everyone was doing before the Adept nerf, but then he shaded 1 Adept to each mineral line, and then just targeted down drones with the Adepts individually, and like no one had ever done that before, and it was...
Oh my god.
It was really weird.
Yeah, there is when a player is really on point with their Adept micro, like as a Zerg, and they're hiding in these little corners. Nightshade, actually, by the way. I got this... I don't know if it was versus Scarlet. I was playing someone. I can't remember who it was the other day. But Nightshade, for coming in from different angles with sneaky Adepts. Oh, there are so many lovely little... You know, like when you get like the thick gap in the minerals where you can fit both Adepts in there and one Zergling can hit from either side?
Oh, yeah.
There are so many of these on Nightshade. It is insane. Let me bring up Nightshade. And what's so cool is you can, from those mineral lines, shade directly into the gap in the third or the natural of the Zerg. So, okay, this is really not loading. I'm like trying to get a high res image to load, and it's just not. Here we go. So, yeah, there's actually a lovely choke point up here for people watching the stream where you can shade right into the gap between the gas and the minerals there. And likewise, I think you get a really nice choke point just here as well, where your Adepts can really threaten very nicely. I think Nightshade is going to be one of the best, just opening Adept Oracle harassment maps. And I think that's actually an interesting dance in of itself, is when do you send those Adepts across the map? When do you keep them home? We were talking about it like, okay, you know, your Adepts went to defend your third, right? In that previous game. Yep. So let's go back into the replay, and let's actually go right back to the start, and let's talk about that, because I think this is something a lot of players don't think about, and they get stuck in the mode of the Adepts always sit at home and just defend the third, or the Adepts always go to attack. But like, okay, constantly I always talk about this as the dynamic of Zergs being too greedy, and we've got to punish them, right? We've got to stop them getting away with this bullshit. So one of the big things is if a Zerg ever starts skipping Ling speed, right? For quicker OV speed, or if they're doing... You won't see this against the Stargate build, you'll see it only if you're doing Archon drops, but you know, they just go straight layer with the first 100 gas. So they can like have an Overseer, 6 Roaches, and then go to 70 Workers after defending the first DTs with like 3 Queens and 6 Roaches and an Overseer, no Spores. And like, that's the shit where if you just shade 2 Adepts into a different base at the same time as your DTs run in, or at the same time as your Oracles dive in somewhere else, like they can do insane amounts of damage, right? So that's something where if you can identify that, like let's talk about, are there any specific tells we'd be looking for if I was just playing on the ladder? What do I see that makes me want to send these Adepts across the map? You talked about if the Zerglings might be going in and whether you'd send more units to reinforce the third, but is there a trigger for us to actually send these Adepts straight across the map once that third Nexus is down?
So the one that's easy to tell that I think a lot of lower level players aren't quite as aware of, when you're dealing with your first adept, shading it into their main and stuff, you can send it to their pool, and if you see their pool not wiggling, then you know they're going overlord speed or spending the gas on something else, and then as soon as your second adept pops, you just go across the map with them.
Just go straight over there, getting that.
Yeah,
face.
like if
that's
you see,
the
like,
way
one
to
of my
do it.
adept shades just goes right to your pool to make sure that like you're researching speed in a timely fashion, because a lot of people will delay it, and like you can kind of tell. I haven't quite.
Yeah.
I think you might be able to get 2 shades down onto it, and 1 shade into the natural mineral line before you have to get out for speed. It's a little bit tricky, but yeah, like if your first shade sees speed not starting, you can be really you can keep your adept up pretty close and just keep shading and checking if he's eventually getting speed, because like you see here, I can see that it's wiggling, and I know you're going link speed.
Yeah. For those who don't know what we're talking about with the wiggle, if you look above here, it's kind of like there's a heat haze above the spawning pool. You can see this kind of like it's all... that means it's upgrading. Now, that's, of course, where you do sometimes get people be like, what if they just start it and then cancel it? If they do that, guess what? That means they've either mined way more gas than a Zerg normally wants to have at this point. They normally only want to mine 100 gas this early in the game. You know, or they're not spending the gas on something else. So either way, you know, it's an inefficiency for the Zerg. But yeah, that's one of the big things, right? With that shade, we always want to try as a Protoss player also to check whether or not the gas is mining. So a couple tips for some of the newbies out there, because if that gas has been mining the whole time, then there's a lot of dirty things that could potentially happen. If the lair is upgrading, that's also another big one, of course, for quick Nidus worms. Not very popular these days, but that's something we wanted to check every game for a couple months there. A fast lair kind of got an immediate response from us as Protoss players. So if we see no link speed, we might just go across with our very first 2 adapts and do damage. This is what we call... I almost never do this, but every time I'm playing Vibe, the man who never takes gas, if I micro those first 2 adapts correctly... Yeah,
I have some anti-vibe builds.
Oh, dude, it feels good, doesn't it? Yeah, because he's so greedy, man. Like, it's like, I'm like, all right. And there's times as well, like I'll play a game like that where I kill like 12 drones or something. And then the next game I kill none. And people are like, oh, I guess he's ahead. I'm like, no, guys, he built 26 slow Zerglings to stop it. It's fine. Like, I am in a very happy position right now. My adepts are still alive. They're going to go secure the 3rd. We're good.
Yeah. Also, one other maneuver to send your adepts across would be like, if there's like 1 ling at your 3rd and you kill the ling, you take your 3rd, and you've had good vision, like right here with your Oracle, and you're like reasonably sure that he's not sending stuff across the map, or maybe you saw his drone count at his 3rd, then as soon as your 3rd goes down, you shade the adepts over.
Yeah.
And then you warp in 2 more at your 3rd, and then you can shade them right away, but generally it's safer to like hide them like here, and then just wait until you see lings going across the map, and then shade them in. Because almost no Zerg player is going to send like 12 lings across the map and keep like 4 at home, right? That's just like, at this point in the game, that's almost unheard of.
Absolutely.
So that's when your lings can get damage done.
It's brutal, man. If my lings go to probe at the 3rd or get a little cancel and those adepts come in, I mean, it's actually funny, right? Because the psychological impact on the Zerg is really big. I get supply blocked when I'm playing Rotterdam 3 times as much as I do against any other Protoss, because I, as a Zerg, am actively hunting all these little edge areas. Here. I'm trying to get overlords out to them, but I'm like, oh no, he's going 2-star Phoenix. We're going to pull these overlords back. So I got to keep checking with Zerglings, because I know otherwise there's going to be glaive adepts just fucking waiting in those choke points, and I cannot go across the map. I need to be identifying where they're going to come from. I need to like have units at home in a central location. And because I'm so distracted with this like hunting the map and scouring it that I don't normally have to do and trying to leave units at home, I'm worried as a Zerg because the Protoss is like untouched on his side of the map. You know, I'm not slowing down the 3rd or picking off the probe or sniping the Nexus, but I'm also kind of like, oh, I've got to do more scouting than I'm used to doing, and it throws me out of my rhythm a little bit as a Zerg player. So that's like really powerful, right? Those adepts finding the opportunities to pair up, even if your more standard is not doing that. And if you're playing a guy, like all your opponents on ladder are headbutting with lots of Zerglings, you're more often going to play like you did this game. The adepts are just chilling at the 3rd, just letting the oracles do the work, and then waiting for this Stalker Sentry push out a little bit later.
Yeah, I generally, with this specific style, I generally don't like being super aggressive with my adepts. I do it with lots of other styles, but with this one in particular, I really like being able to hit the fast 5-gate pressure. And if I lose the adepts early, that means I have to probably warp in more back at home. Whereas when I don't, I can just go 2 adepts right into sentries and start building up energy and hit that faster push.
Let's take a look at this game, though. Let's think about it. Because I was a greedy shithead who built an insane number of drones. So
I think I pushed the wrong angle in your 4th. I think I should have pushed through the middle.
Yeah, I agree. I think you could have got there faster and got on top of it.
Yeah, it's a cleaner pullback angle. And the problem that you can get flanked super easily isn't really an issue when you have 30 stasis wards. So I'm not quite as worried about that.
Yeah, Zerg's got to start spreading through with Zerglings, and especially like in this scenario, what am I building? Ravages and Queens, because I'm like, oh, I got to break these force fields. I need Ravages. I need the high volume units. If I already have Zerglings out and I can just spread them really well and set off all of the things, that's awesome. But yeah, so let's go to 5 minutes. Just playing through that scenario, because this is like one of the sort of review things you'd be looking at when you're trying to crack the nut of an opponent who's got the better review with this sort of style. And any PvZ opening is this a guy who's got a weakness of adept shading in? So if these adepts went across the map, I think they would have done really well versus me this game. If you kind of look at me, I got 2 Zerglings, right? I'm being a bit greedy.
It's a bit of a gamble with that though, because it's very hard to tell if the Zerg has safety links. Like if you see them, then obviously you know. But if you don't, it's very hard to scout every part of their base and essentially know that they don't have them at all. Yeah. So it's sending in the adepts without seeing any lings is kind of a gamble. Like it can work, and you can always cancel the shade, I guess. But the reason I don't think it's that great on this map is because you'd want to sit like right here with the first 2 adepts. Yeah. But there's usually an overlord there.
They get spotted very easily.
This space is too far away. And then if you're here, you're kind of close to the path by the watchtower, so it's unlikely they'll be completely unnoticed.
So what about the idea of sending them across purely to force them to build Zerglings? So like you've got 3 branches. You've got what you're doing here, sitting right at home with the adepts, conservative, defensive, no worries. There's nothing wrong with this play, right? We're digging for those small edges, right? That's what we're really looking for. But what about you go across, you show them at this base, and then you literally just try to leave them there for like 30 seconds if you can, with no intention of actually shading. Maybe you shade to the natural, whole intention, you're not even looking at it, you're just canceling it off your control group while macroing or microing your oracles, and then you shade it home right after that, knowing this is going to make the Zerg be a little bit more honest, be a bit more uncomfortable, build those Zerglings. And then you have the third option, which is if you're playing a dickhead like me, who's such an idiot, who knows he's playing a Protoss who's... I didn't actually know I was playing you, but I knew I was up against some weird shit. And if I knew I was playing you, I probably would have been even greedier, right? Because I know I got to take an edge. But you say, this is a Zerg who fits into that category of greedy douchebag. I'm always going to commit with those adepts. We're always going to send them across, right? So you've got this catalog of options organized in your brain. So it's much easier to say, this guy skimps on Zerglings really hard every game. We're always going to commit with that adept. And you know what? Maybe just as a standard play against most players, as long as you're not going to get punished by losing the third or having those adepts kind of consistently getting surrounded, we'll do the adept threatening as another branch. What do you think of those as just kind of as options to have in the playbook? Yeah,
that's something I've been thinking about a lot, is generally how to get more of an edge with your units without making more of them and without like essentially actually committing them. One other thing I came up with in addition to something like that where you're just sitting with the adepts and threatening is just taking the oracles before I'm doing my push out with 5 gateways. When there's like a little bit of time where I probably can't do damage, but I'm still kind of flying around, it's just fly from like here to here to here and just back around without actually committing, and then just tax the Zerg's APM and force them to like maneuver their queens all around, and constantly worry about if I'm gonna commit to a base or not, and maybe mess something up because of that.
Yeah, I love thinking about those options, right? Because essentially the opening is still just any adept oracle opening, right? It's the same as any other one at the very beginning, and it's like the times where I always talk about the Neeb killing someone with 2 adepts and an oracle, and like Trap was so good he'd always bring his first 2 adepts with Trap standard opening for a long time across, and he'd put them in that annoying position. He'd rotate between the paths, exactly what you were talking about. If they ever got jumped on, the oracle would always be there in time to like just murder the Zerglings, and it would be a terrible trade for the Zerg, even if he managed to kill the adepts. And it was just kind of like, I've got a shade threatening as well as the Oracle Phoenix. And it was so good at Trap would regularly get the Queen slightly out of position for his Oracle Phoenix dive when the second Oracle joins up with the Phoenix. Or sometimes, you know, if it's Stalker first, you skip the Phoenix entirely, and it's just bam, suddenly 2 Oracles hit the main. There's 1 less Queen there than they were hoping for, or the Spore's a few seconds late, and like suddenly the damage gets in. But either way, like the Zerg's making a few more Lings than normal. It's just fascinating kind of what we can achieve with Adept Oracle. So I just wanted to kind of dig deep on that and think about some options. I think it's such a well, right? How can we stop the Zerg from getting too comfortable and being too greedy?
Oh yeah. That's something that I generally try to do, is try to find new ways to exploit stuff like that. And Zergs, if everyone's doing one way, then Zergs tend to get good at dealing with that. But the whole reason I came up with this style is to kind of avoid having to rely on that sort of thing. I wanted a style that kind of just is very, it's weird, but it's like safe. So I don't really have to worry about as many things. And yeah, like in this game, for instance, there were a couple times where I was worried that there would be like Lings or Mutas coming at awkward timings, because my scouting wasn't the greatest. But that's generally just a factor of things I could have done but didn't do. Like there are plenty more of Revelations I could have thrown down on your base to try to see your tech, that sort of a thing.
Yeah. It's
I think
execution, it's not strategy necessarily.
Yeah, I think this style is significantly less gambly than even a lot of standard Protoss builds, like something like a DT drop or something like that. Is way more reliant on doing a specific thing with a specific unit set that kind of relies on your opponent making a mistake.
Yeah.
Like the game I was gonna show that I don't think we necessarily have to show now is one where it's just like I didn't get any damage really with I got like 2 drones with my Oracles and like a Ling with my Adepts or something like that, but pretty much nothing happened and it just turned into a normal game. So that way you can see the progression of the build.
Yeah, I mean, even in this game, you didn't really do a lot of damage, right? It was like 6 workers. You know, it's not bad, but it's not great either, right? And yeah, as you said, the 4th. So this is the point you're really hitting on, is your big mistake in this game. Gave me more breathing room than you should have. You wanted to push through the middle, straight up here. You'd get here faster. You get on top of that base, but you'd also have just a cleaner retreat path back this way. If you came up that path,
I wouldn't have to be poking up a ramp to poke into you.
You'd be revelating those creep tumors as well, right?
Yep.
I would imagine.
Yep.
Yeah. So you'd clear the creep with a rev. Stasis
this
trap
specific
spread.
push feels kind of a lot like a Terran that opens 1-1-1 into 3cc and then does his 2 medevac push, where you have a similar escape ability and a similar way to deal damage without it really being committed at all unless you lose the units.
I had a sensation of you shouldn't be able to get away here. I'm going to get you as I start flooding Zerglings out, right? Now that I've got a few Ravagers and Roaches, and then you just walked away. And I was like, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah. You can't stay for too long. You gotta walk away. And the Stasis Wards, it's like, even if they're not really hitting more than 1 Ling, the Zerg still has to take the time to split off the Lings. And then they can't just run across the map as quickly as they could. But yeah, I think if I was in a better position here, where I have everything like here, then I can deny you from ever getting into my natural and probably save my 4th base as well.
We've got a few people just tuning into chat at the moment. So Radiant here, this is the account of the Whippler, as he is known. It's his serial killer name. Raze, our Neeb 2.0, we call him. Yet another abandoner of Terran, and adopting the true master race of Protoss, and got very good very fast, though you were already off racing for quite a while, I think, before you made the full swap, right?
Yeah, I've always off raced a lot more than most other people.
How's your Zerg?
So in Heart of the Swarm, it was like mid GM, but then I didn't play it for a very long time in Legacy. Because it was so different from what I had been used to, and I couldn't really do like 2-base muta every game the way I could before. So I didn't play it for a long time, and I'm kind of decent-ish. Like it's like 5.3, something like that.
It's a very different beast, isn't it? It's changed a lot. I mean, I even have a big fall off now, because the last time I really worked on my builds and was ultra competitive was early Legacy, and everything's changed. The maps are so much bigger, is one of the biggest ones. But like Zerg is just a different race. So like Zerg versus Zerg, for instance. We have a dancing dot joining us on the stream, by the way. This is our cheerleader.
I hate PvZ. It's so there's so much stuff going on.
The thing is, I used to be able to contain it as this aggressive kind of momentum focused style, and it's real. Like you play it as if you're a Terran or a Protoss. It's like Just keep attacking him so we can't get away with either surprising me with an insane all-in or a crazy amount of greed, right? You know, you always have to have pressure timings to keep a Zerg in check, right? If he's too greedy, you just kill him. If he's built enough defense, you pull back, you know? Or if it's half-half, you do some damage, but you get scouting, you understand what he's up to, and you kind of, you get information on exactly what's going on, right? And then it hit this point where obviously last season's map pool, it was like, no. Every game you build 70 drones and you mass roaches, and then you both have like a 20-minute prolonged multi-prong roach ravager battle, including burrow roach micro popping up everywhere. And I was like, oh shit, this is hard. This is like a sustained mechanical exercise.
So difficult.
That's it. Well, I've gone and I only play upgraded Ling Muta now. Because I'm like, nope, I'm not gonna match you, Mr. Full-time Zerg player, you know, or even the non-full-time ones in Roach vs. Roach. There's not enough room for me to use my brain. There's too much hands, not enough brain.
You're just constantly worried about getting stuff in the right position and not dying and making.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I would kill 50, 60, 70 drones. I would lose 5 drones in a Zerg vs. Zerg, and I'd lose the game because they're just rebuilding their economy, and like I'd have this sense of I'm winning. But I'm actually down 10 workers the entire game, and I never actually get ahead. So it's kind of funny how much it's changed. Do you feel... I mean, Protoss has changed a crazy amount over the years as well. One of the big things is muscle memory with Protoss is something I'd like to ask you about, because Stalker changed massively from Heart of the Swamp. I'm just getting trolled here by Dot. Do you have the stream? Do you want to take a look at the stream? If you don't? Just so you can get in on what the audience...
Oh, all right. Yeah, that's something.
She's just been walking into shot. She's just trolling me right now. She's putting shit on my hat. I'm talking to Raze. We're doing the pig show right now, Dot. You're allowed to interrupt. It's fine. It's not a very professional... She's just like, oh, you're just talking to some random nerd. It's fine. Raze is telling me how to dick Zerg players, and I got to get dicked by him on the ladder right before we started the show by chance. I say by chance. Did you snipe me on purpose?
No, that was completely lying. Yeah, because I'm like, oh, it's like 4:50. I probably have time to play a game before Pig gets on. Yeah, I think one thing to note is that I think once I see you transitioning into heavy baneling like that, I cut disruptors, like get no more than 4, and just go into Archon. Like essentially go Archon Stalker with a couple disruptors and some sentries and some oracles, and then just bounce around.
I mean, yeah. Let's hop into this other replay of yours. Can you just throw it to me on Discord?
Oh, yeah, and, I have. I can invite you into it. I have.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I have a few.
I'll make you the party leader. There we go.
Yeah. So I got I have a very long game versus Risky where he plays Hydra Lurker Turtle. I have 2 weird games versus like Hydra all-ins, but I can tell you right off the bat, like if you smell out someone's going like 50 drone Hydra all-in or whatever, you just don't stop making oracles and you just chrono out charge really quick, and you just like A-move them with Oracle Zealot, and it's super easy. Like you cannot attack into this with Hydras. Even if they bring queens, like often even without the zealots, right? If you just attack from the side where the queens are on the back and the hydras are in the front, so you don't need to focus fire, and you just A-move, right? Like you literally just laser beam A-move. Like I've discovered that if a Zerg player is turtled up with all their queens and all their hydras behind a bunch of spore crawlers in the right position, you like maybe can't attack into them, but if they ever like move off creep and attack into you, you just kill them. Yeah. So yeah, I don't really think I need to show those. No. Let's show this other one that you've got. So I got the Hydra Lurker macro game. I have another Ravager Bane macro game versus Namshar. I have a. Let's watch the Ravager Bane versus Namshar. Okay. That sounds really interesting, actually. Oh no! It was Roach into Hydra Bane. Roach into Hydra Bane. Okay, cool. Because he's in Canada at the moment. I believe he's in Montreal, practicing on the NA ladder quite a bit while he's living over there. So. Yep, you can steer this replay and kind of show us around. But while we start up there, sorry, before I got interrupted by my lovely missus. Muscle memory with Protoss has changed a lot. Stalkers, after they changed their attack thing, that that was a big change in muscle memory, right? How you micro stalkers was just that just takes a while to get used to. Like, there's nothing more to it than like you just need to spend a lot of time like doing it. And like I can't even remember how the old stalker felt. Like either the 4.0 stalker or the one before that.
I can't either. What about warp prism pickup? Does that still occasionally get you? Because that's a more recent change.
That gets me sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's not a very big one. It was more just like there are a couple times where I'm like, oh, it's just barely on the edge. Because I wasn't really someone before that would always try to have my warp prism like exactly 7 range away for the pickup or anything like that. But there are times now where it's like I load in the unit and fly the warp prism in close and then go to right click it back right at the correct range, so the units fly in and the prism just goes away.
Yeah.
But then sometimes the units don't pick up and I'm like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. If I'm playing a game on US East, man, that's you lose both immortals before you get a chance to turn that prism around. Like it's so annoying. But yeah, it's those things, they do just take time, right? But they're the things that I think for returning players are probably some of the most frustrating with the units. Like there's this deep muscle memory. You're like, oh, it's like, you know, you go to play soccer and the ball's twice as heavy. Suddenly, like, this is totally different at first. And it doesn't actually take that long to adjust and learn, but it just is always a bit of I think, throws you through a loop at first initially.
I mean, it takes time. It takes time.
Other than that, I guess, you know, have you adopted, you know, the High Templar? They have an auto attack, so no control group. You just fucking move them now like a bronze player.
I'm upset about that change because I've always the entire time I've ever played Protoss, I've always had my High Templar on a second hotkey, and I click them to like follow my Immortal or something. And the problem now is that like sometimes if you have like Immortal, Archon, High Templar or something, and you're playing against like, especially versus Hydra Bane when that was in its prime, you'd have your army and they'd be trying to get like a big concave, and then you're sitting there, and as soon as the Immortal stops moving, the High Templars start auto-aggressing onto things, and they'll go like chase a Baneling down somewhere, and I would just get so upset whenever that would happen. Because before, they would just keep following it because they had no auto-attack.
Yeah, there's literally just, hey, we cast spells, we get move commands, that's it. We will follow that unit forever. So that's actually one of the funny ones. Someone getting handicapped by the Neeb change, the make it so your units auto attack and don't move right into battle. They're still a relatively short range units. They still do move forwards though. So anyways, let's walk us through this build. I mean, we can fast forward as much as you want. Just talk about whatever you want.
This is pretty similar to last game. One thing I'd like to note is that I almost always gateway scout, which a lot of people don't really do anymore. There's Zerg players that do a lot of weird builds, and I hate trying to react off going gas first, even though like you get a little bit extra. Because especially last patch, I felt that like there was so much you could do off gas first openers versus Zerg, and so little you could do off of like non-gas first openers. But then sometimes someone 12 fools you, and it's just really annoying. So yeah, I almost always gateway scout, and I'm trying to be active with my probe. Like once the spawning pool finishes, I pull down to check if they went fast third. If there's no third there, then I just patrol outside their natural, try to see where their lings are, how many they're making, that sort of thing. So this game I'm going straight Oracle, so I went Stalker first, because that way you at least have something to kill an Overlord, so it doesn't just sit a slow Overlord on top of your main or something. And I saw he like delayed ling speed, or I don't think, he didn't get it at all. So I'm not being too cautious with my Adept. It's like 345 still sitting there. One other small thing that I like about going Oracle first, in addition to like all the other benefits you get, is that the Zerg player has to build faster spores. Like he didn't this game, or he built one in his main, but he was greedy and skipped one in his natural because he's got 2 queens there. One thing to note is that if I don't do this here, oftentimes you can fly in with your first Oracle, kill 2 larvae at the third base, deactivate it, wait for your second Oracle, and then go back in, and his spore won't be done, and then you just kill both queens. This game, I stayed around a while longer to kill a second larva and a drone that was morphing in an egg, because I got 1 hit on it before it morphed.
Yeah, so it was
I
very
don't have
low.
the energy to dive right now,
Okay.
unfortunately. But yeah, still same setup, and he scouts this like immediately. And you'll see his reaction. He just goes into very quick double spore in his main. He's going to start adding the second spore at his third, trying to spread it out a little bit so I can't even poke in. And now I'm setting the Adepts up because I want to do like poke with the 3 Oracles at the third, 2 Adepts in the natural, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
A little bit of a messy shade, but I get a couple drones with it.
Yeah, that could have been one definitely where we did a little more since he skipped ling speed.
Yeah, because I shaded right into the lings, which is not ideal. My gateways were a little late this game. I think that's one thing you can get really crisp down, is just getting the gateways as soon as possible, because then you can just like poke as soon as it's done.
Yeah.
Because like you look at this build and you think like, oh, okay, instead of I can delay these gateways and just get double Forge Twilight right now, but then the Zerg can just go up to 90 drones and you can't do anything. So I really like this creep clearing push with like 4 sentries and stasis wards, and it's really annoying for the Zerg to deal with. And it's weird because they've, like you said last game, they don't really have experience against it. They don't really know the exact number of drones they can make, or even like what unit set to make necessarily. A bunch of times people will do things like try to rush Corruptor or something. Meanwhile, I'm only building like, what is it this game? Yes, 6 oracles. I think I might have lost one.
So you're gonna dive in this main in a moment. Are we gonna kill the queen and then go drones, right?
Yeah. So this game I only
don't go for the dive.
No, I thought about it, but he had the second. I didn't check if he had the second spore there, but I think his overlord was seeing my units, so I decided to go for Cleep Crew instead. Yeah. Because if I dive and I'm pushing in with my other unit set, and he just surrounds it with like 20 lings, then that can get rough. Especially if you're trying to micro the oracles. But so one thing this game is that
are you gonna warp in more units, or it's just 5 stalkers, 5 sentries here? You might have adepts if they survive from earlier in the game. Is this always the amount of units? Do you ever rally anymore or no?
Last game I rallied a few more, but generally I'm not trying to accomplish much with this. Just kill this creep in front of his base here. One thing to note is that this game I only made 6 oracles, and I showed this to Astray, and we were talking about it a little bit. And he was saying, oh, you could just do this off 1 Stargate. You only made 1 oracle out of your second Stargate. But the conclusion I came to was that the second Stargate gives you so much flexibility and scares the Zerg so much that it's just worth it, I think.
Yeah, the scare is big, man.
Yeah, because if I just go 1 Stargate, then I think you're really vulnerable to some Hydra all-ins because you can't keep making oracles, and your tech's not that much faster. And if I go 2 Stargate, it's like they're forced to go double sport every base, make a couple more queens than they were thinking of making, and sometimes you get an even bigger overreaction. So I think it's just like the scare factor is always worth it.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. The understanding there of the we are playing a little bit more of we missed the creep treatment. That sucks.
Yeah. This was unfortunate, but I'm just like, okay, it's time to back up now. He can't really shove too hard, but this is when this is the point in game where you kind of want to find out if he's got a Spire. So ideally, I would, when I was still here in the middle of the map, I would send out 2 hallucinated Phoenix and just wrap around to his bases.
Why not just split an Oracle and fly that around the back line?
Because I don't want to lose the Oracle.
Okay.
And it's a little bit annoying because he's got 2 spores at every base. So your hallucinations will probably die quicker than usual unless you're really focusing on microing them, which I don't want to do.
Yeah.
But so this is the second push. So this is.
Sorry. Just wanted to talk about that scouting. I noticed Puck is so consistent with his Phoenix going right along the edges of the map, and it almost always sees everything. So that's like a Puck specialty, which I find really impressive, is how his Phoenix. And I'm like, you could do the same thing with a hallucination or an oracle. It's just how precise he is with avoiding the spores, but then he'll just dip it in. It'll dip in after it goes past the mineral line, check there and check behind every mineral line. And he very consistently scouts the Zerg's tech almost exactly. So I just a little kind of tidbit.
That's a area that I could work on improving a lot. One thing about this game though, you're asking about rallying units. I think because I didn't, I was able to really rush my tech out this game. So I already have 1-1 and blink done. And if you look at the state of the game now, I cleared some creep, backed up, and now I'm going to hit a second push with Stalker, Sentry, Oracle, and 1-1. This didn't really happen in the game versus you because you were really aggressive with your unit set, and so I ended up just poking at your 5th base a little bit. But it was a little bit later, didn't line up as well. But in this game, if you look at the state of it, so the Zerg's on 78 drones. He's on 4 hatcheries. He's getting his hive. He's getting the Spire. You're generally. Where would you expect the Protoss to be right here? Probably not having a fully saturated mineral 4th on 81 probes, moving down to take a 5th.
Disgustingly beautiful.
Yeah, it's because he wasn't able to sneak out anything to try to harass me, I just kept him shoehorned into his base. One thing that I am worried about with this style is if someone's mainly defending, but manages to send even 4 lings around or something to my 3rd when I'm moving out, then it's I got to make sure I have the warp in available and I got to micro my probes a little bit, and it just makes everything a little bit more awkward.
There are there are these narrow windows where you could be abused, right? But what's
so as opposed to the game versus you, where I lost my 4th base, I didn't this game. So you see, I'm already in a good spot mineral wise, and I'm about to take this 5th base here as I'm poking. And my goal with this is just spam stasis wards and just be annoying and just keep him back at a time when because normally at this time, Zerg's either really rushing their tech or they're trying to set up multi-prong harass and different stuff like this. But he's not able to do that.
I love this push because this is actually, I have a term for this sort of attack. And, a lot of people say, oh, what's the goal here? I call this an oogie boogie push. You're literally just running around the map shouting. There is no way you're ever going to shove deep into creep and get massacred by biles and lings. And you're setting up such a field of stasis traps that gives you so much safety here. It's funny, right? Because, yeah, like once you've played against this, okay, like let's think at this point, the Zerg is like flanking behind you with Zerglings. Like, you know how you normally click a big pack of lings to come in from behind? They're going to be doing that with like two Zerglings, just trying to set off stasis traps. And you're going to be like, well, I'm just throwing down more stasis traps. And then like you can even shift some of your units back and kill the Zerglings before they set them off. You can start doing your stasis traps in a tighter formation around your army rather than more spread back. I can imagine there being this interesting little micro battle where the Zerg is trying to kind of get rid of some of that safety, some of those layers of stasis traps by coming around the back with Zerglings. Or simply is trying to say, screw this, I can't let you set up like this. I'm going to try to already be out on the map being aggressive and at least pinning you back a bit while going up to the next stage, kind of like what I did where I dove in with the aggressive units. But it's this awkward situation for the Zerg. It doesn't seem to have a clear fix. And this is something where I'm really interested in, okay, we're trying to just create a situation where they can't force the fight. We can threaten, we can force mistakes, we can make them unsure what their composition should be. And then you're going for this kind of uncounterable mix of units where you can shift really hard one way or the other, right? So let's talk about this a little bit. Okay, you're playing someone, he starts going pure Zergling. He's like, fuck this, it's just Zergling. You're just like, okay, it's just like Lings and Banes. Do we swap really hard into Archons? Do we just keep making Stalkers? Do we skip the Disruptors? Do we add some Colossus in then? I mean, what are you thinking?
I'm not too sure how much I want. I think there's room for Colossus, but Colossus I think would be if someone's playing like Ling Bane Fast Broodlord, because then if I have like Colossus, Oracle, Stalker, I just turn the Oracles on, put them on hold position, and then just A move and blink under. And Oracles kill Broodlings faster than pretty much anything else in the game. So it, without taking up ground space.
Do they get one shot?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I never thought about that.
And I have double forge, so I'll have like 2/2 Stalkers versus the Broodlords. So like if someone goes really fast Broodlord and tries to push with it, then I think that's an easy defense.
Oracles
but I don't think you necessarily need
Broodlords. That's just this like hilarious little.
Like, it's a really weird situation, but like double forge Stalker with Oracle is pretty good against Broodlord.
That's insane. I never thought of that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and so like this game I saw Hydras and then like Ling Bane, so I started swapping into more Archons. As soon as 1/1's done, I go into 2/2 in charge. 1 on blink, I go into 2/2 in charge, so that I have that flexibility. One thing to note is that it's fun and nice to poke out with this unit set and set up the stasis wards and make your opponent scared. It's 10 times more insane defensively if they're trying to push into you. It's like, yeah, so if you play a Zerg player that likes to do like those mid-game all-ins, like it's very nice. It's very, very nice.
Stalker Sentry, like there is, most proto styles don't want Stalkers, right? Yeah, but if you're defending an all-in with force fields, Stalkers are just amazing. They're such a flexible unit, right? Like they're good against every all-in when combined with force fields.
Yeah. So if you look at what just happened there, he did a really good move, which is Risky does a lot of similar things with a different unit set, which is you always try to be counterattacking with part of your army. And he kills, what does he kill? He kills a full base and 17 probes at the 11-minute mark. Normally that's like pretty awful unless I can do a lot of counter damage, but that only brings me down to 65 probes, and then I just reprobe from there. And then I bring the Oracles back to defend without having to move my main army. Like the Oracles just continue to get value the longer you keep them alive. Ideally, like I think it's an almost infinite skill cap thing. Like ideally, I should be spreading stasis wards, especially around my exposed bases, and then using just the Oracles defensively. They end up sitting for a long time this game, but like the general flow of this is that a bunch of Zerg players will try to get really fast like into their late game, and they'll go either like Broodlord or Lurker and just try to sit and be like, okay, well your unit set sucks against mine, you can't push into me. And then from there, what I'll do is I just try to harass. And because of the way that I get more economy, early game than most other Protoss styles. It lets me continue to get more economy, and then as a result of that, I just focus on containing the Zerg. And the Oracles give you such a mobile defense setup that you can defend these much harder to defend bases than you normally could. Like normally, like this base is the base at the what is that, like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock is a nightmare to take, especially if you're pushing down at the bottom. But with Oracles, that's possible. And so I think this unit set, it's decent on any map, but it's really, really good on maps where it's a large map with spread out, hard to defend bases, which is normally the exact map that you don't want as Protoss. So it gives you a lot of flexibility with your map pool. I think World of Sleepers is an amazing map for it because you get so many expansions that you can take that are hard for the Zerg to take if you're poking at them. And the best bases for them to take is kind of this 4-base rectangle setup at the top, which is not a setup that Zerg players almost ever want to be having. So you're forcing your opponent to make a weird unit set and control it differently at different timings, and even they're supposed to expand differently. And then once they get to the kind of Doom army, which is much easier to deal with after the Infested Terra nerf, but still pretty difficult, you're just focused on base denial. You're just like, okay, I'm going to keep my 80 probes, I'm going to keep expanding, keep defending my expansions, and then just try to deny like your 6th base, maybe your 5th base if I can poke at it, try to harass them over Zealots. And then what ends up happening is that you just slowly wear the Zerg down until they have pretty much nothing, and you have like 10k, and then you can just build like 8 Tempests or whatever and move them.
I really like this, and I think there's two things I want to talk about here, and I want to kind of highlight, because I have an understanding of them, but you playing this style have I'm sure, a much more in-depth understanding. I'm sure can add some details. So a few things to point out that I find really exciting here. One of them is, let's talk about the upgrades first. So double forge is something you very rarely see, but two things. Number one, this is helping all your units for the future, all ground units, right? So it's kind of like whichever way you go, you're kind of already pre-investing in them, right? So if you end up with a ton of Stalkers and Sentries, which you're almost inevitably going to end up with this style, you're often having +2 melee Zerglings, especially if an Adrenal Gland comes in. And if they ever get like 20 seconds of actual surface area on your Stalkers, they could have 1/3 your army supply and your Stalkers die. They can actually punch up so hard. Like 2 Zerglings will ruin a Stalker, and yet they cost like 1/3 of the cost, right? It's crazy. But you add these armor upgrades and it makes a drastic difference. You are also talking about fighting against Broodlords. Having +2 armor on your Stalkers is so powerful against Broodlords. The difference between +0 armor and +2, it is actually crazy. And this goes across many styles. If you end up having Zealot run-bys, like this in the main, for instance, this is so much scarier than a +2 Zealot run-by. Because what are the units that respond to run-by?
So bad against this.
Exactly, and it's always Zerglings that are the first responders to harassment. So the more you spread out the engagements, the more you're basically creating just Zealots versus Zerglings, right? Or just Zealots versus a few Hydras or Roaches. And those armor upgrades give you so much longevity. Hell, I mean, I often talk about how if you end up with Immortals with +2 armor versus +0 Hydras, and there's a Guardian Shield, like the Hydras don't do damage. It's actually hilarious. You're like, are these unupgraded Marines shooting my Immortals? You're like, oh, I didn't realize Immortals savagely murder Hydras, but they do. So these armor upgrades, they really help in certain interactions. Now, if you're running Zealots into a Hydra Bane army, they're still worthless. The upgrades do nothing for those Zealots, right? But the more run-bys you do, the better. And this is such a overwhelming multi-prong. I'm taking bases everywhere and I'm backstabbing you, and I'm trying to create a bit of space with the Oracles, and I'm creating threat, and I'm getting up into this. I love the way the Double Forge plays into this sort of style where Broodlords aren't even scary, I feel, off this unit set. You know, I was trying to get to Broodlords as well in my game. I was like, I think I need to go Broodlords. But in hindsight, now that I'm getting some understanding of this, I'm going, yeah, I don't think 8 Broodlords changes that much here, because they're going to be so well upgraded. Your 3/3 is kicking in at like 14 minutes into the game. It's so powerful. I think that's just really cool. Like the Double Forge, if you can get to it, you really can drown the Zerg. You were saying at the start, you're playing Zerg, right? You're drowning them, right? You're just mass expanding and attacking in as many places as possible.
Yeah, it's normally getting there is the problem. Like, I've always loved Double Forge Stalker and trying to kill Broodlords with ground armies. But the problem is you can never... It's very difficult to get there under normal It doesn't fit into most typical Protoss builds. If you try to just like go like Stalker Sentry into whatever, you're kind of liable to just get run over by like Roach Maxes or like a Hydra All-In or something like that. Whereas this, it gives you a couple things. The Oracles give you the safety early game, and then they give you the safety mid game with the Stasis Wards. And then that extra economy that you get from that safety lets you make more Stalkers, and the double Forge kicks in, and it's like these units that are normally pretty much worthless in this matchup suddenly become very powerful.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting situation here. Once I saw Broodlords, I ended up really focusing on my harassment, and I have 2 prisms here with warp from speed as well, and the one at the top's bouncing between his main and that other base, and then the one at the bottom is sitting further away and just warping in Zealot DT. And I'm not really microing these very well, and they're not trading mega cost efficiently, but it's still doing pretty well. And that pressure has made him want to move across the map with his Broodlords. And I see this by the first Corruptor here. Or no, I think, yeah. So he's kind of confused as to what he should be doing here, because he wants to go across, but he's like worried that I'll push in. And if I'm in position here, I think I can just deal with this army. But since I'm out of position, I think about going back, but then I decide, wait a minute, no, I'll just go. I'll lose this base, put down a bunch of Stasis Wards so he can't attack with ground units. I'm going into Tempest here, and then I'm essentially going to base trade him for as long as he wants to base trade. Because if you look at the bank here, I can just build so much stuff, and he kind of can't. And I'm killing his tech. So he has to pull back here with these Broods, which are so slow. So I've killed like so much in the meantime.
I love the mass pylons that you queue up there. Realizing in a base trade really with lots of money, I've lost many PvZ base trades because of that. I go, let's spend that money, and then oh no, you idiot. Tempests ruin Broodlords if you have buildings in front of them, because the Broodlords just take so long to push through the buildings, and the ground army can't really get through. So Tempests become so good. Like I don't like them on the map, and I don't think you would never see Broodlords and then just start building Tempests. Be like, that's how I counter the Broodlords on the map. This is only for this base trade, right?
Yeah, the only time you attack with Tempest is when you're really ahead and the Zerg's super contained, and you're up in economy. And then it's like, then you can just poke with them, and if they're trading cost ineffectively, whatever, you just make more. But yeah, generally, this unit set, like, a bunch of what I'm doing is trying to kind of bait my opponent into attacking into me. With, like, the first push, they get over eager and maybe try to, like, flood my 4th base and stuff. And then as long as I can get back and get set up, and I have Stalkers, Sentries, and Stasis Wards, and then the Oracles themselves can turn on. It's very difficult for them to attack, and then it just continues once I add the Disruptors, and then once I add the Tempests, and anytime they're attacking me, they have to be worried about Zealot Run-Bys and DT harassment. So you're really trying to get your opponent just be like, yeah, just sit on your 4 bases or whatever, and I'll be on 7 bases with 14 gateways, and just slowly.
That's the way to do it, man. One other cool thing... So Archon Disruptor is actually one of the best mid-game compositions in this matchup. Archons destroy any unit that jumps on top of them, right? Any unit that comes forward, clumped up, trying to jump on top of the Protoss army, the Archon destroys. The Archon's weakness is going into a concave of Ravagers, Hydras, Lurkers, these longer range units. Which are
the exact unit that Disruptors tend to be good against. So if you look at this engagement here, I had a pretty good sense that I was already ahead this game, like very ahead. And I know that I have a big bank, so I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure I can just trade here. See him poking forward. I shift queue the Tempest on the Broodlords, and I'm just gonna ignore them for the rest. And what I do is I blink the Stalkers forward, and I shift queue the Stalkers, and then I can just micro the Disruptors, and then wait for Blink to come off cooldown to blink forward again.
So just to break that down,
look how little the Broodlings are doing, even with +3 attack. Like normally they'd be shredding this army, but like even Broodling Fungal, the Stalkers aren't really dying that quickly.
Hells yeah, it makes a huge difference. So just to kind of go through the order of actions for any of our players who aren't quite as familiar with breaking down these late game fights, they seem very overwhelming. The Disruptors are your lowest priority thing that you add in last in this fight. But it's very quick at the start. It's select control group 3 for the Tempests, shift click those on the Broodlords. Up to this point, the Tempests may have just been right clicked on an army unit, right? Like following a Disruptor or something, I imagine?
Yeah, I'm kind of torn with whether I want them on my main army hockey or on a separate hockey. Because the annoying thing is that I generally have 3 army hockeys, and then like I put gateways on 5, and then like once I have warp gate done, I can put something like a warp prism on 5 or something. But if I have I never put my disruptors on my main army hockey. So if I have like my main army on 1, disruptors on 2, oracles on 3, and then warp prism on 5, then like there's a rough spot for the Tempest. So like a bunch of times if I have my oracles still alive, I just slap the Tempest on the main army hockey, and then I'll just like control them or whatever.
Control click the Tempest, shift click them on those, and then would you just control click your Stalkers as well to micro those usually?
Yeah.
Okay. Control click the Stalkers, you blink, and then shift click those on the Broodlords as well. And from there, it's basically just microing your Disruptors. Like, obviously, you start the fight by A moving everything, and then it's shift click the Tempest, blink the Stalkers and shift click them, and then just micro Disruptor shots. And you want to have a really clear order of operations deep in your muscle memory. So if anyone out there is new to trying to do this sort of stuff, it seems overwhelming. You need to actually like write down your exact, this is the order I do shit every time in this scenario. And it needs to be muscle memory. And you might even be like, I don't even use the disruptors at this point. Like some people like in the late game, like, you know, if you're a low enough level player, I just throw them away at some point because it's too confusing, and I just make more Archons, and I just focus on the focus fire with the Tempests and the Stalkers or something like that. But you could see Raze there was instantly, it was like shift click the Tempest, shift click the Stalkers.
And then you have to worry about the disruptors, and it's
because the disruptor micro is very situational, adjusting. You're not doing that at the same time as doing the other things. It's too much for your brain. It'll melt. Alpha Star was one of the funniest things to watch against Serral, because it's like I'm microing a Phoenix, 2 Oracles, 2 Disruptors, an Archon, and I'm trying to land force fields at the same time in this little army. And I'm like, a human would never control that, because it just melts out. We're like, no, don't have the fucking Oracles and Phoenix with your army. This shit's weird. This, like, there was too many spellcasters in one army. But it was using them really effectively because it's an AI that doesn't get, you know, overwhelmed by trying to manage too many. I mean, it killed a few of its own Stalkers with disruptor shots, but most of it was pretty clean overall, yeah.
So one other thing that you'll run into this a lot with this style is Lurker Turtle, which I think is very strong, especially if you can use Nidus to backstab. And this game kind of showcases how that tends to play out.
Awesome. So it's a game against Risky. Cool.
Yeah. So one thing that I was throwing around in with this is once I see Lurkers, I just go into like ludicrous amounts of Robos, like 4 or 5 Robos, and just go essentially Immortal Disruptor with like some Stalkers. And then just try to use that to bully them around so that they can't take the fights with the mass Lurker.
Okay, cool. I guess we can fast forward through this. Let's just take a break from the strategy for 1 minute, and while we catch up with this replay. Big thanks to Deo for the 4-month resub. Maelstrom with the Twitch Prime. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. If you guys do have any questions, throw them out now. If I missed them, Shur was asking about Hydra Lurker Viper, so we're getting to that with this replay, of course. Thank you, Shur, for the question. If anyone else has any questions we missed, please repost them now in chat so I don't have to scroll up and hunt for them. And it should be good. Of course, you're a local of Philly, right?
Oh yeah.
So you go to Philadelphia
tomorrow.
Awesome. So what time does that start?
It's like, I think games start at like 10 a.m. Eastern.
10 a.m. Eastern. Awesome. And it's going to be, so that's tomorrow's Saturday. So it's a Saturday, Sunday, 2-day. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
I heard unfortunately a bunch of people can't go. I don't know what happened. Did you hear what happened? I know Euthermal suddenly couldn't go. Neither could Special. Is there like a Mexican
as far as I'm aware, Euthermal's like a maybe. Like his flight got canceled, but he might be able to find another one. Special, something happened with his flight, he can't go, and some of the Europeans decided it just wasn't worth it, or their flights weren't working out or something.
Well, Mark's in Mexico at the moment, so yeah, I guess him and Special, there must be something going on. Maybe there's a strike at the Mexican airports, or one of the airlines screwed up or something. There must be something going on with the airports in Mexico, yeah. I guess.
I think Special could have gone, but he decided that like the schedule would have been just insane. Because I don't know if he would have been flying in that morning or had to go right to the venue, something like that. Right. He decided not to do that. Yeah, this game I ended up sacrificing 2 adepts, and what did I kill?
Not a lot. It wasn't a great shade again. I mean, this map's not as easy for the shade. Like Nightshade, I was talking about, because, I mean, this map, I guess the best is from this top area into the third, but that's also the area where the units tend to be. So I do the same thing where I want to hit that natural, but you've kind of got to shade from the rocks. Like you can't shade from the tall grass. So the Zerg always has plenty of time to see it coming. It's not as powerful as some of these other maps.
One thing to keep in mind, especially for like a lower level player, is this stasis ward of the third. I think is super important. If you're worried that your opponent's gonna like do like a little bit of a later link flood and try to surround all your sentries or something, I think especially if you want to be safe, build a shield battery and the stasis ward, and then that just really limits what the Zerg can do at your third. Because there are like there's a couple games that I have where like I just wasn't watching and I lose a bunch of sentries and like it gets really awkward. Because then if the Zerg continues to build links, you have to keep your oracles at home. And you have like no scouting information as to what's going on, and your tech's a little bit later from losing the sentries.
Yeah, those units, of course, if there's no stasis, you really got to use the choke points and sit in the mineral line and use hold position as much as possible. But if you've got the stasis, you want to sit on front of it so that you actually gun down any individual Zergling. And it's only if they come in with a big pack that the stasis goes off. So really nice positioning there.
Yep.
And look at this, just so calm with the retreat. Instant retreat when you see all those units.
Yep, and I don't know if he skipped Rotron, but he's going right into, yeah, he skipped Rotron. He went right into Hydra Bane.
Oh my lord.
So I have 6 sentries this game, and if he tries to attack enemy with that, as long as I'm at a good angle at a ramp, it's generally pretty easy to defend. Because you have a couple stasis swords behind your army, he can't really dive, and then if he does, then like something will get trapped outside, and you can just use the oracles. And I'm just looking for opportunities here. Having a constant tag on his army is really, really nice.
Yeah, I once again just want to highlight how conservative you are with these oracles, right? You know, you're not going 8, 9 oracles. You're stopping at 6 a lot of the time, sometimes 7. And you're keeping them alive, and you're keeping the stasis traps. It's an integral part, and it's the reliable option, right?
Yeah,
and don't get me, yeah. Sorry.
This feels like a really clean number of oracles, where it's like anytime I have 6, 7 oracles, I'll always have a ton of stasis swords down for a push. I have to worry a little bit about not turning the oracles on too much, but that kind of happens no matter how many oracles you have, because turning them on just like drains the energy. But yeah, anytime that I have a push with this, I have a lot of stasis swords. Whereas if you just have like 3 or 4, you don't really have that same number. Like especially if you're pushing a lot, you're only going to have like 2 stasis swords at any given poke.
Yeah, my feeling, and I want to hit this home one more time, is that people are going to start countering you, and they're going to figure this style out, right? Every style gets figured out to some extent. Mm-hmm. Even though this is a rather solid one, there is always a way for them to get ahead and cut corners. And I do think one of your key adjustments to just fuck with people and make it difficult is going to be going more YOLO with those oracles against certain players and in certain situations, and building an extra 2 or 3 oracles and that sort of thing. Because look at his main base, for instance, 1 spore. You know, like you're going to get people just cutting more and more corners and just throwing that in once in a while. It's going to be brutally effective against some of these guys.
I ended up stepping a little bit too far forward. I'm like, Colossus there, broke a couple force fields, the wings get out, but I'm not too worried. So I went Colossus this game because he had so many Hydras. And then, so he's going Lurkers here, and he's just got 13 Lurkers, 2 Vipers sitting here. Oh yeah, and so what I was explaining with the Mass Robo thing is that the general gist of it is that you just make too much stuff for them to abduct. Which is something that I do anyway if I'm playing like Stalker Disruptor against Lurker. And I see someone going Vipers, I'll just make a ton of Robos and like 4 or 5 Robos and just power out Disruptors and just essentially out-trade them. Because the Vipers take time and energy to be able to pull things in. And they're just kind of a worse Phoenix if all you're using them for is like lifting up the Disruptor to cancel the shot. Because they're more expensive, they're very fragile, and it's easy to see them. And like they have to spend all that time to gather the energy.
Well, I guess with that in mind, yeah, they are harder to mass. I mean, the right move though would be to get 6 of them early here as risky, right? Like rather than just be sitting on 2, it's like to get enough to have a bit more renewability. Make sure you don't overstep with those Vipers so they're not getting blinked on. Because I mean, in terms of the range advantage, he should be able to win any sort of standing fight where you're both like picking away at each other from the edges. Because anytime you go in range for a disruptor shot, he should be able to abduct that. And if you blink, like you're gonna get your stalkers wrecked by the Lurkers, right? So
yeah, I'm not sure to what extent he has a window in a normal game. I think with Lurkers you can sometimes get a lot of freedom to get the Vipers, but that can maybe come at the cost of something else, and maybe you can't afford as many of like Hydras somewhere else to defend. So yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's definitely possible that like he has room to get 6-7 Vipers here and be totally fine. But I think I probably have a bit of a window to do more damage before this, if that's what he's going for. I think like using 2 Vipers and just using them to occasionally pick things off is very consistent, especially with large numbers of lurkers. Which is why, like, if you go the mass robo style, it's part of it is just you force them to decide what they're going to abduct. Because if you have Immortal, Disruptor, Colossus, Oracle, like, they want to abduct everything. And each unit that they abduct, they have to kind of think about how that changes the battle for them. If you're like, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to abduct all the Disruptors and stuff like that. And then they're the ones that have to, like, reposition and make decisions based off of that, much more so than you. You just kind of have to look at what they killed and keep poking or pull away.
Yeah.
They have to, like, if they're just picking off one of everything, like 1 Immortal, 1 Colossus, 1 Disruptor, it doesn't really do much to your overall army other than just be annoying. And so if they go for a specific thing, then they have to make a lot of decisions in the heat of the moment, and you can sometimes capitalize on that.
I think, it's something where, if it becomes an arms race, if he's like, well, I just have more lurkers, so I can lose a couple, and I've got more Vipers. As you said, there might not be enough Hydras. Case in point, we're very quickly on stream. We're going to go look at Raynor versus Hero, and we're going to look at the moment where Raynor has the far superior static composition in Winter's Gate, Game 3 from BlizzCon Group C, and he abducts every disruptor and just gets ravaged by zealots, just overwhelming everything. He just doesn't have enough, units on the ground. His lurkers aren't quite right positioned. You become very immobile. So this is that point, BlizzCon Group C here, and you see he's kind of forgot to burrow a lurker up in his third. He goes to try to respond to that. The units come in, and he basically abducts like every disruptor. A lot of disruptor shots even whiff. And Reynor's been so effective in the previous minutes, just picking off units. And then suddenly Hero just kind of collapses in on it. His zealots tear apart Reynor's third. They would have done it 30 seconds earlier if Hero wasn't so terribly addicted to F2. I mean, maybe he can break that habit. He's going to the military. I hope he has an okay time there. Much love to Hero, who's just started his military service run and didn't know. Very sad to see, we won't be seeing him. But we do see this army kind of, get isolated and just rammed through, because you get these very high supply specialty units making up the bulk of your force. You got a Zerg who's often tempted to go into the high 80s even in drones, where their army supply is quite small. And, Zealots, double upgrades, super mobile. Your Stalker Robo army, a bit more mobile. You can veer around. You can look for these openings. I just kind of wanted to show this because I think, I'm saying, well, why don't they just get 6 Vipers and abduct all your Disruptors and regen and abduct all your Oracles? And as you're saying, there could definitely, if people start doing that, be a bit of an arms race in that direction. So let's hop back in game. Let's see how you play this one out.
One thing that I should be doing this game is just having like more harassment, maybe like a prism up there to deny bases, because I kind of get lasered in on just the army movements and trying to be in a good position. And basically, I can never attack into his army, but if I bait him to attack into me, I can take some really good trades.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that's it. I always call this rotating. It's like in Dota, you're just switching lanes. You're okay, 5 heroes are in top. Okay, quick, jump up, jump bottom. Move around, create threat, and hopefully in those openings find an angle, right? You're rotating between in
a couple
bars.
Zealots into his natural here. They're poking away at stuff. And it can kind of it can snowball really easily, where like sometimes once you get the first major break in their wall and you start doing damage somewhere, then it becomes exponentially easier to get in somewhere else and do more damage.
Yeah, you really, as the Zerg, need to start spreading your units a lot better against this. But even then, it's like, you just jump on 1 or 2 lurkers on their own and take advantage of the stasis traps. Such fuckery, man.
You just put them everywhere, and like it's fire and forget for you, and the Zerg has to spend so much APM dealing with it.
Yeah, the micro, for anyone who's wondering, is that hard. You have your oracles on a key, and you press it, and then you hold down shift, and you click, 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 and then you just right-click them back onto following, in this case, a Stalker. Yeah. And they will just go and do that shit. It takes not that much actions. When you're first getting used to it, you'll be a little slow. You get fast at this real quick. Even if you're a 100 APM player, you can throw down stasis traps real quick. You don't have to be super perfect when you're throwing down 10 stasis traps at a time. We've got DTs to defend counterattacks. We keep throwing those zealots in. So one thing I really would like you to start doing, we're going to give some PiG coaching here. Little piece of, little tiny tidbit. You're often not always going to get the prisms out. Your prisms might die, right? In this game, real Colossus, Disruptors, go, 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 robo. Pylons on the edges. With this style, you will very rarely have a Zerg scouring the map and having full map control because your oracles and the mobility and the nature of your style pins the Zerg back. So honestly, pylon here, pylon here, pylon here, pylon here, just to like warp in those zealots on the flank. This map's a bit smaller, so it's not as good for it, but like on World of Sleepers, a few of those pylons will never get found, right? On those edges of the map. Just having a few of those pylons around, I think like gives you such easy counterattack ability for these zealots to just come out of the fog. And I think, you know, sometimes if the Zerg gets like 20, even 10 seconds warning of a zealot run by, much easier for them to handle. But even a single zealot run by that just seems to appear out of fucking nowhere can be one of the most tilting and throwing off, you know, it really throws the Zerg off their element. So I just think, yeah, those pylons, if that's something, I would love you to like take a little mental note of that. I think it makes a huge difference for your zealot run bys.
Yeah, I do that a ton versus Terran. It's just like, it feels so wrong versus Zerg. But yeah, it's like your creep spin, basically. Yeah, so like at this point in the game, your general gist of what you're doing is you just back up. Like you just set up your stasis wards, sit there, maybe poker the Tempest, and then you just run. Once they come for you, you just like you just walk away.
Yeah, drop a few balls on their army maybe, but otherwise you just maybe drop some disruptor shots, but it's mostly just pull back, rotate, right? And I mean, look at this. Half of his army seems to be frozen almost all the time. This is really frustrating.
Yeah, and it's so stressful for the Zerg player. And normally it's something like setting up a concave or setting up a surround. Then the fight becomes really easy for them because they just A-move from both sides. But it becomes extra punishing versus this because that means there's one side that they're probably not looking at for stasis wards at all, and they just run into a big stasis.
You know, it kind of, to me, it's reminiscent of when Widow Mines first came into the fold and Terran started setting up these like no-go zones for Zerg where, you know, you used to be able to just come from two sides and two big balls and sandwich the Terran, and then the Zerg started getting punished really hard for that, where they had to actively spread those units on both sides as they went in and try to have front runners that are kind of trying to spread away from the core lumps of units to try to lure the shots into the Protoss, the Terran army, you know, get the Widow Mines to friendly fire, but most importantly, pull them away from the big clumps of Banes. And it's the same thing now where I'm like, fuck, man, I can't just sandwich. I gotta start throwing these units in, and as you talked about, you know, the Zerg wants to be counterattacking and fighting elsewhere where there isn't an endless field of stasis traps, but they got to be on point with those overseers. So there's another arms race and a meta shift. The more they counterattack, the more your oracles are going to be on defensive stasis trap duty, right, rather than offensive duty. If they go more Vipers and Lurkers and more Turtley, more offensive duty with the stasis traps, but also more zealot run-bys and DT run-bys, right? And more movement, right? So the turtlier they are, the more you move. The more they're attacking, the more you pull more defensively, and the more you're just reinforcing your defenses, right? So you're very reflexive in how you want to use your army based on how the Zerg's trying to counter you, right?
Yeah, and one thing that I could get a lot better at is like, so he's doing a really good job trying to always have his army split up. Anytime I'm not directly pressuring him, he's managed to split up his army and hit from two sides. So one thing I can do is that once I get into a position and set up stasis wards, immediately send my oracles to my most exposed expansion and start building stasis wards there. Because I won't have to worry about putting stasis wards on the front line down for a while if I just set them up. But I haven't been doing that, so like there's been a couple times where he got down here and killed this base. He tried to kill the top base, but forgot an overseer, so I could just warp in DTs.
Little tidbit for the Zerg players out there, in this sort of game, you actually go to your Overlord rally and you make like overseers, and you rally 3 or 4 to your staging points. So you have counterattack staging points you're going to repeatedly use. One up here, one down here. And each time you go in with a backstab, you grab one of those overseers that's on standby and you bring it in. Or you just make a habit of every time you split off a counterattack, you add an overseer to that control group. I've done it both ways depending on the situation, but I got to tell you, it complicates things. And for the Zerg, it makes them cost a lot more, and it's such a pain in the ass. But if you as the Zerg never adapt, some players like keep forgetting the overseers. Let's see, he does remember it on the right hand side, but he gets it sniped, doesn't have another backup reserve one, and suddenly he's like, so DTs could clear that whole army. Just something to keep in mind for the Zergs. But this got really interesting. So you actually went into Tempests here to just pick away at him. So you wanted to siege him down.
I think that Tempests are actually very strong versus a Zerg player who does not have any air army, right? Because they're just so annoying to deal with Hydras because they can just poke away. They're not going to trade super effectively versus the Viper count, but it's something where that means he always has to have Vipers available. I wanted to start splitting my army into two here. Like, I had a group of Zealot Stalker at this base, but then before I could really get it going, he started attacking into me. And I'm not really trading very cost effectively here, but like, I still have so much more of a bank than he does. Like,
well, this is a
really
disaster
think, right?
tactically, right? Tactically, this is a terrible situation that you let him get here, but the bank gives you a lot of room to wiggle.
You think, oh, the whole time, like, I wasn't really killing the Zerg base, wasn't trading too much, and he's just had like so much economy. But at the same time, I've had like 80 probes, and I haven't had to make quite as much static defense as him. And he's been losing all of his Vipers constantly. And it's still like, he's not trading super effectively there, but like, again, I don't really need to. Like, I don't even know if I save any of these Stalkers, or if they just all die harassing the base.
Well, he's still down 6,000 resources, but let's be real, you ate shit a few times on that engagement.
But like, that's the thing. These engagements are like, would normally be game losing, but because I've been able to get this massive economy,
yeah,
it's like I can be fine. I can make a new army and try again.
Yeah. With the Tempests, highest priority is always focus firing Vipers. If you keep Revelation on their army, you're going to be gunning down a few Vipers before they get any abducts on the Tempests, and you're just going to keep that trade going. Secondary is obviously anything. Lurkers is probably the highest priority, but you kind of usually just A-moving them, I would imagine, just shooting, hiding back if they need to.
Because I wasn't looking. But, yeah, there's Vipers are really good, and then I don't really worry too much about focus firing the Lurkers with the Tempest after that. I just kind of let it go.
Yeah, just let him aim.
But yeah, it's getting into weird territory here because I just lost all my probes at that base, and I'm losing this base at the top, and now I'm not mining super much.
Oh, you better recall those probes. You better save those boys in the top right.
I think I might.
Please. Or we can hope the Zerg's a bit overwhelmed as
well. Yeah, or we can just hope he doesn't see him. That works.
Yeah, this did get weird. Okay, cool. Now you're going carriers.
But one thing I start doing here? Yeah, I start going carriers because I think this is something that I want to do eventually. I think this is something you do when your opponent has like 18 lurkers. You just go air. Like, you just go air and maybe storm. That's one thing that I haven't really been doing is getting storm in like any of these games. Because I don't think it's that useful aggressively with this style. I think there's definitely room to like have like a couple High Templar at these bases with the cannons, and then it's really hard for him to break. But I'm not sure how much it adds versus lurkers. Because if he's already committing, he's either essentially not going to be able to break the cannons, or he's going to be able to, and I'm not sure how much the High Templar sway that.
Yeah, that's always up for grabs a little bit, up in the air. Yeah, lurker style. I mean, it's so much supply that doesn't shoot up. They're kind of on this Hydra lurker, getting back from that into Viper Corruptor. It's an awkward transition. You know, you can't. It's hard to ever get the Corruptors out. Sometimes you just find yourself stuck on Hydra Viper for the rest of the game, and you're trying to get enough Spore Crawlers. But you know, if the Zerg doesn't have a gigantic economy, getting out the Spore Crawlers they really need to contest an air army is incredibly difficult. And he's...
Yeah,
he loses his cool there a little bit. I mean, it was a bad situation losing this base, but it becomes disastrous. He tries to just jump on you and massacre.
Disruptors are very good against people who try to jump on you.
Yeah, just teabag those lurkers, man. Just drop trowel. Show Risky had a Twitter post after this game. We love you, Josh, but your Twitter is a meme. And of course the casual, 6 Archon warp in, nice. All right, cool. I mean, well, we're pretty much. I think we've got a cool overview of this style. This has been a very long video, so thank you everybody for joining us for it. We will finish up in the next few minutes. I don't think there was any specific question. Was this inspired at all by Alpha Star, Stalker, Oracle, Sentry? Some people are asking.
A little bit. Yeah, it's a combination of like, I saw Alpha Star doing something that I like the look of. I always like high economy for Zerg, because I don't like those like low economy scrappy games where it feels like two banelings just essentially decide the game if they get into your mineral line. I prefer games where it's like there's margins of error for both sides, and that it's like more of a economy and strategical game where like you're trying to get in good positions and vying for control of the map instead of just like, okay, you did a bit of economic damage and now your army's just way bigger.
Yeah. Plox had a really serious question. He said, you think 5 robos, but he says, don't you think you should actually go for 10? Just so you can instantly remax on Immortals. Serious question deserves a serious answer. What do you got?
I think I've never tried 10 robo. I'm not sure I ever will. But there could be some room there. It's just like, yeah, that's. I did have a game where I went 5 robo, and the Zerg player found them at a base and killed 4 of them, and then I made 4 more. So that was 9 robos built in a game, but that's not quite having 10 at the same time.
I will support that. Can you revelate stasis lurkers? I don't think so. I don't think you can do anything to them. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I think stasis revelate doesn't do anything to stasis.
Yeah. Setting up staging points with your overseers don't work when your F2 says sure. Making fun of all the Zerg players with no control groups out there. That's what pervert mode's for, mate. You set them up on pervert mode in the corners, and then you unsiege the one you want to bring with your backstab. That's how you do it. Do units lose their commands in stasis? Yes, they lose everything. They become a dumbass. That's why stasis trap harassment is so annoying. Yeah, you got to put your drones back to mine afterwards. You're like, God damn it, I don't want to. No, can't I give them an order now? It's like, nope.
You click. Works the same with the style. Like you click units to like go attack somewhere, and they hit a stasis halfway through. They're gonna stay there when they pop out, unless you issue them a new command. So you're really stressing the Zerg's multitasking. There's a couple small things we didn't talk about. Things like, so generally there's like 4 common responses to this kind of a style. You have people who go like Hydra and maybe like Hydra Bane, whatever. And then in that case, like you're just going Stalker Disruptor and then focusing on harassment, and then you're essentially reacting to how quickly they're attacking and trying to expand. Like if they stay low tech and just try to make the army, then they can't ever really attack into you. And if they're going for like more of a like Lingbane Ravager, that sort of thing, then you I think want to go heavy into Archon with little disruptors, try to keep your sentries alive, and just be annoying. And there might be room there to start making more oracles, because they don't have anti-air in their army. And then your oracles can be really annoying. It can keep them from really counterattacking. So that's 2 styles. Yeah. There's also the Roach, like something like Roach Queen into like really fast tech, where they're like really gunning for the Broodlords. With that sort of a style, then you're just focusing on mass expanding and going Stalker Disruptor. And then if they ever attack into you, you just kind of kill them and win because you have a much bigger bank. And if they don't, then you just keep poking, deny expansions, and eventually they'll mine out, and you should probably win. And then the last one is people doing weird stuff with muta switches. That's a big one that can be really annoying. One thing that I was running into with 3 Stargate Oracle was that it gave the Zerg space to go like 8 Corruptors and then go muta. And so like I couldn't really just respond by making a Phoenix, and that was really annoying to deal with. But I think this style puts you in a better spot because you're going into 1/1 blink so fast that they have to go straight muta. I don't think they can go Corruptor into muta. I don't think they ever have time versus just 6-7 Oracles. And then because of that, that means if it's like really, really quick muta, maybe like no Roach Warren, or they don't really make many Roaches, or they're doing like the 3 base 6 gas all in with like a couple Roaches, then you just make Phoenix and micro your Phoenix and defend. If it's anything later than that, you're going to have a 4th base and you're going to have 1/1 Blank Stalkers. And then I haven't really tested this, but it's a very different situation than normal, because normally the whole point of mass muta is that you keep your opponent on low eco, and you can just out expand them as a Zerg player pretty rapidly. But I think if you're already set up on 4 base and you have 1/1 Stalkers, I think you don't even need to worry about switching into Phoenix. I think you can just kind of like play a macro game from there and just keep blinking around and trading with the mutas. It depends on the specifics of the game, of course, but I think you can pretty consistently like not build Phoenix versus mutas with the style.
Dude, that is awesome. There's going to be about 100 people who watch this who are Masters Plus players who are going to be like, thank you so much for that last 5 minutes. And everybody else is simply going to have a somewhat opaque glimpse into the brain of a pro gamer, where they're like, that was a friggin' labyrinth. You know, they're like, you're mentioning so many interactions and things and scenarios. And these are, you know, guys, like I always give that analogy of a build is a tree. And when you're in bronze, it's literally just a fucking trunk and there's nothing else. And as you start improving, you get a little branch off here. He's on one base. Maybe I shouldn't take my third and I should build more fighting units. And you kind of, you know, figure out how to branch off in that direction. Or I want to go air and I'm going to branch off. You start to grow these little branches, right? So it starts with just a real bare trunk and you start to, then you get like little leaves, which are all these little set plays on each branch. You start to get flowers, which are these beautiful little adjustable micro interactions. And, you know, you get to a pro gamer level like Raze and you guys just heard, you know, how many goddamn branches there are and little things intersecting, and there's so many different options. And honestly, that's StarCraft. You never know all the options, right? Part of what I kept going on about with going deep on like, when do your adepts move out? Why do they move out? Should we build 9 oracles or 6 oracles? Is there's infinite options, and all we ever seek for as StarCraft players is to understand those options a bit more and to be familiar with as many as we can. It's something why a player like Haas can be so good in certain situations, because he takes you down a part of the labyrinth or a part of the tree you've never been before, and he's been there 300 times before, and he knows these super niche weird branches that nobody else has ever explored, and it throws people into these unfamiliar zones. And I mean, this here is, I think, a cool example and such an interesting show, because this is a build order and a style of Protoss we're not really familiar with, so it's really new for us looking at it. And I mean, this is just awesome that you've been kind enough to share it with us, because I think there's going to be a lot of mass stasis trap on the ladder after this one. A lot of people are trying this out, man.
Yeah, I would say like if you're below masters, you can probably just go 3 Stargate Oracle instead of 2 Stargate Oracle, and just make a ton of oracles, and then just wait till your opponent attacks you, and then just turn them on and A move them. The 2 is like a lot more nuanced, a lot more like, okay, I need to scout properly and react to things. So like 3 is just like you get a ton of oracles and they're just like part of your main army.
Yeah, I guess also like, you know, you could do things like remove the sentries, right? There, you know, if you're in Platinum League, you're trying to do this, maybe you're not good with sentries, you say, oracles are more than enough fancy spellcaster units. I'm just going to transition into, you know, Arc on a Mortal Charge lot, like a really simple, or a Colossus, you know, something's a bit simpler, but a bit more maybe. There's so many ways you can always adapt this, but I mean, as always, that's what StarCraft is, right? You know, every time someone comes and says, hey, I did your build order and I lost 3 games, it's shit. You know, I immediately say, well, you're playing StarCraft wrong. You know, build order is there to inspire you. It's also something you need to fucking spend some time practicing before you understand how to actually execute it. You're meant to lose your first few games playing a build order. You know, it's not a walkthrough, right? You know, StarCraft isn't the game for people who got stuck on the level in fucking Final Fantasy when they were 8 years old and immediately went to the internet and looked up a walkthrough because they couldn't figure out how to talk to the guy in the corner of the screen. You know, StarCraft's the game for the person who hunts around until they figure out how to solve that problem. And that's why it's so good, is because it teaches you, you've got to just be constantly looking for answers and adjusting and finding ways to do it. So, I mean, this has been awesome, man. What can we plug? Have you been streaming at all?
Yeah, I have a bit of a hardware issue where like my internet dies a lot and I have to be on Wi-Fi right now, and then I have to pull out my USB adapter and plug it back in. And like I don't get dropped from games, but like it means I have to restart my stream. So I haven't been able to stream very much because of that, because I just get annoyed when I have to restart it. But my Twitter is RazeSC2, and I will also be playing at Cheesedelphia tomorrow if you guys want to watch me. Hopefully I'll make it to day 2. And yeah, hopefully I'll be able to play some games on stream. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, guys, we're going to link there to the Twitter. Check out Cheesedelphia. Starts tomorrow. Super excited. There's going to be a lot of good players there. TLO is going to be there amongst a lot of other awesome players. I think, is Neeb coming down?
I believe so, yeah.
Neeb's going to be there.
I think Nationwars is coming too.
I think Vindicta's there. I saw him tweeting a picture with Estrella. They were both on their way over.
Estrella's coming, yeah.
It's going to be really sick.
Future's going to be there.
Yeah, that'll be on the Nerd Street Gamers channel, I would imagine.
Yep.
Nerd Street Gamers Twitch.
Or it might be. I think it's twitch.tv/Cheeseadelphia.
Oh, really?
Now.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
Cheeseadelphia now. Okay. I guess they got bought out, didn't they? Actually, they made a bunch of money, which is cool. I'd love to get you on again in the future to, we can have a bit more of a talk about other stuff as well. This was awesome because this was a real strategic focused one. But, likewise, I'm also trying to get more pro players on if they just happen to be watching a match. I'm kind of just putting out a public tweet being like, who the fuck wants to watch this match, and do a little, stream it while we just talk shit while we watch a tournament. So if anyone, if you ever see me tweeting, please reach out, and I'd love to have you just chill and have a beer while we watch GSL or something, if you're ever up watching that at the same time. Nerd Street Gamers channel doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. Guys, just go to Team Liquid or the StarCraft directory. It'll be up there with the most viewers all day tomorrow. You'll find it in the StarCraft directory of Twitch. It should be fine. Awesome, man. Thanks for coming on. Last shout outs, words to the community, or Salty Terran players before I let you go.
Well, as a former Salty Terran player, I probably shouldn't go in that direction. But shout out to my team, Roof Gaming. I will be representing them tomorrow. I'm gonna drive over and stay in their Airbnb in a bit. But yeah, I will be playing tomorrow. Try to watch the stream if you can, and that's about it.
Hells yeah, man. Thanks for joining us. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching the show. Have a great time.
See ya.